Moving right through these WPC PowerDriver boards today, this evening. And this one is from a Twilight Zone, the most power-hungry WPC pinball machine ever created, or close to, I'll say. You can never say what's the best or the most. The client, Mr. Rabin, apparently, had been chasing some reset issues for a while, apparently, because some of the modifications that I found to this PowerDriver board, which you might do to resolve reset issues, had already been done. So, for instance, somebody had changed the 15,000 microfarad cap at C5. These steps are all in the pin wiki. They have replaced the 100 microfarad cap at C4, the 100 microfarad cap at C2, not because of resets, but because that cap leaks and will damage the zero cross section of the board. What they had not done was replace these headers at J10114, sorry, there's some GI headers, and then the other one for the power is J101, especially for the 5-volt power. A lot of times folks will replace just the male header and not the female housing and pins, and that needs to be replaced when this board goes back to the client. Along the way, somebody had replaced some bridge rectifiers. Those don't have anything to do with resets. And this is interesting, had installed a easy SBC 5-volt regulator, which these are kind of nice. This is one of the old ones. I believe this one's going to cause some kind of audio popping when you power it down. It won't on my bench because I don't have a soundboard connected, but these are nice in that you can adjust the 5 volts with that tiny trim pot right there. And I have done that with the client CPU attached, and the voltage is set to 5.10, which is perfectly fine. The 12, regulated 12 is 11.8, unregulated 12 is 14.9. That is flash lamp and solenoid power. So this driver board has had everything done to it that you can do to it to help, or I guess eliminate it as a candidate or as a cause for resets. Now, I would advise the client to repin J101, the female side, when he gets the board back, if he hasn't done that already. And then if that doesn't work, J114. If that doesn't work, then J210. And if that doesn't work, take the Z connector out, which it would be sitting about right here in a Twilight Zone. You can also repin the 5-volt power here on the DMD controller. There's an equivalent one on the pre-DCS soundboard and on the Fliptronics board. You can, at least on Twilight Zone, you can take that whole harness out, the harness that goes from J114 to J210 and then up to the other boards. You can remove that whole harness. It's a lot easier to work on that way, and it's easier to remove the Z connector. On the CPU board, I have cleanly removed the old RAM, installed a socket, and installed a 6264 NV RAM. And here's the secret sauce. I have removed the factory 5-volt voltage watchdog and replaced it with one that watches all the way down to 4.27 volts, which is perfectly fine also. This is the secret sauce for avoiding resets. That part costs literally a quarter and can probably resolve a lot of resets on a lot of games. At some point in time, U20 had been socketed, which is nice. At some point in time, somebody had replaced C31, which is nice. I did, I'll have to pull this tag out, but yeah, I did J210. I'm still going to do J212. I noticed there's a little corrosion on that last night, and so I'll replace that after I complete these tests. So let's test it, although I don't expect to find anything wrong here because the issue was resets. So let's set the date and time. One thing that you give up with NVRAM and Twilight Zone is the playfield clock will no longer ever show the correct time of day. For me, that was never a big deal because it never showed the correct time of day anyway. These are the other settings that I always make. This is probably already on free play, but for continuity, or whoops. All right. Crazy fingers. Okay, let's get back to tests. And we'll test the switches. We have to test all the functionality of both the CPU board and the PowerDriver board, since both of them were sent here for checkout and repair. Testing a bunch of switches here. Good. Solenoid test. Just make it a little random. I don't remember. It's been a while since I tested a Twilight Zone board. Not that random. There's a couple of solenoids that are being driven from the 8 driver board, which is in the upper right-hand corner of the game. The AUX 8 driver board. Looks like general illumination is working perfectly. We'll do lamps and flashers at the same time. Just 5 flashers driven from the solenoid driver board. It's got, I think, another 4 that are driven from the AUX 8 driver board, but I'm not positive of that. But lamps and flashers are working just fine. And that's it. Both this CPU board and this driver board are working just fine. Sometimes I'll tell you, these 2 LEDs, LED 2, that is, LED 2 and LED 3, these are in here. They use the LM339 and this resistor bank to do a crude line level voltage indication. And I don't remember what it means because it is meaningless. So sometimes I'd like to just take those LEDs right off the board, because the only 5 LEDs on this board that are important are the ones that I call the bow tie 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, thank you so much for sending this. It's been a heck of a weekend. Everybody have a great week.